don't buy the Metro, don't buy the Metro, don't buy the Metro, don't buy the Metro. This is a 1982 X-Reg Mini Metro L. That's almost as base model as you can go on one of these things, with a few optional extras chucked in. It's for sale with Sussex Classics at the moment, and I didn't know it was there, and I turned up to go and review something else, and I'm now thinking, I don't need a Metro, I don't want a Metro. But it does look kind of fun though, doesn't it? Don't buy the Metro, don't buy the Metro, don't buy the Metro, don't buy the Metro. The bonnet badge doesn't say anything, but it's an Austin badge, and it says Mini Metro on the boot. It's got basic little headlights, but in an interesting little recessed cowl thing to kind of hide the fact that they are just basic little square headlights, rather than anything interesting and moulded and fancy. You can tell they were going for as many markets as they could with one simple stamping, because this scuttle here, as well as having cutouts or drillings for the right-hand drive wipers, it's also got holes pressed for left-hand drive wipers, blanked off here, and the centre one used for windscreen washers. Where this swapped over to left-hand drive, this wiper and this washer would be switched over obviously as well. It's pre-drilled for an aerial, but the car didn't come with a radio. The LC8, or Leyland Cars 8, Metro design came from Harris Mann and my favourite, David Bach, who had history with modular-handed components in the ST1 and Range Rover. It would have been the ADO 88, named for its 88-inch wheelbase, but BL realised that the future was in Fiesta-sized Super Minis, and so went back to the drawing board. At this point, this car was a replacement for the venerable Mini, which had been on the market for decades, and they needed something new and they needed something exciting, and this was it. This is the car that Isagonis had wanted to replace the Mini with back in the early 70s, but it finally made it to the market in the beginning of the 80s, a small hatchback which was at the time safe and advanced. We all know how the Rover 100 was basically killed by the NCAP testing in the mid-90s, but by that point it was a 20-year-old design, and anything else that came out in 1980 or so was equally as bad or as good for the period. Here we have the A+ engine. You'll hear the full specs and details in a voiceover in a second because I don't have them to hand. This 998cc A-Series engine with its single SU carb was carried over from the Mini along with the gearbox and hydric gas suspension. The 45 horsepower 4-cylinder gives 0 to 60 in 22.7 seconds and a top speed of 81 miles an hour. The interior is basic but functional and not unattractive. The simple instrument pod on top of the dashboard just houses your speedo, temperature, fuel, and down on the steering column you've got your wipers, lights, horn, not much more. But down below you have the optional extras, the exciting things like heated rear window, fog light, and one other mystery item. There's no radio on this car, so big old vents down here. And someone paid extra to get a cigarette lighter, as some base models didn't even have that. The T-shelf is David Bach's design standard. It means that the dashboard is symmetrical and just the instrument pod bolts on either left or right hand side depending where the car is being sold. Now, this car is luxury. It has 2 sun visors. I've seen basic Metros with only 1. I'm shooting this kind of blog style because the tripod's outside the car. But there's actually quite a lot of space in here. You've got good headroom in the back, and I'm like 5'10", 5'11", and I'm not touching the ceiling. You've got a hand grip, which is lucky because there's no seatbelt. There is a blanking plate, so you could fit one. I'd recommend fitting one if you were to buy this car. A little tray or recessed area above the seat is down here, so you can put bits and pieces. Somewhere for your phone in this modern age. Your drink of something in previous years. I guess cigarettes, because there's an ashtray here. There's always an ashtray in a car from the 80s or 70s. One on the other side as well. There's reasonably good legroom in here as well. If this was a better spec car, this blanking plate wouldn't be here and there would be a headrest, but this is an L, so blanking plate it is. The fact it's an L and, you know, almost utter base model almost makes it kind of more interesting. But even though it's an L, someone's thrown in a few optional extras. It's got metallic paint. It's got 2 visors. I'm struggling to think what the other options might be. Air vents as an option? I don't think so. There's no button, so you have to turn the key and remember not to lock it in the boot. L. That's my regular car reviews voice. For such a small car, the boot's actually a pretty good size. I've got 3 sort of average sized camera bags in here, a slider, there was a tripod in there earlier, these seats fold down as well, which is kind of useful. There's a slot here, so if you do fit a seatbelt, that can run through there, be mounted up there. Again, I would absolutely recommend that. This boot lining and carpet looks almost unused. And here we have a reservoir for the rear wash wipe. So this car isn't completely poverty spec. Wow. God, that seat's close. Which key is it? Oh, it's a floppy key.
Oh, it's like black one, Matt, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was. That's the steering lock. There we go.
Oh, look at that.
Manual choke, yeah, manual choke, yeah. Oh, I've not driven a Metro in years. I can't remember the last time I drove one. This might be slow, but it's actually really quite good fun. Oh man, these roads are terrible. I'm sort of surprised to find it's actually got a manual choke on it, on a X-Reg car, which is what, 1982. You kind of forget how recent auto chokes and that kind of thing are. It was a nightmarishly hot day, so it doesn't need a lot, but the car's not been running for a while, so it needs a little bit of a tweak. And this thing just rides beautifully. It really does. It's got a 4-speed gearbox, and I haven't opened the bonnet yet, but I don't think this has got power steering on it. I'll be amazed if it had. But the ride is, whoa, it's a little bit bouncy, a little bit rolly, but the steering is so direct, it's just crazy. Gear change is a tiny bit rubbery, but so light, and you just flick it through with your fingers. It's brilliant. And the pedals are all very light indeed as well. Because it does kind of shimmy across the road a little bit as you hit bumps and things, especially if you hit a bump or a bad surface on a bend. It does set the car juddering across the road. Not sideways exactly, but okay, yeah, maybe a bit sideways. But it's not got an awesome amount of power. It's a base model L, but it's surprisingly lively. That's a real, not a surprise exactly, but revelation perhaps. This was meant to be the replacement for the Mini, and I'm sure you've sat in or looked into a Mini or seen a photo of a Mini interior, and you know how small and basic a Mini is. Now, you may be thinking this is kind of laughably crude and simple, but honestly, compared to a Mini, this is a world of luxury. If you're moving into this car from a Mini, it really would feel like a trade-up. I'm not talking about as a classic owner, but I'm talking about in the early 1980s when this car was, current. It really wasn't that long ago where these things were absolutely everywhere. It was everyone's first car because they were cheap and they were plentiful and they were good handling little things. They're easy to drive. They're easy to see out of. The visibility is incredible. They're roomy and spacious. It's no wonder that so many people in the UK's first car was a Metro. Why so many driving schools had filled their fleets with them. The seats are reasonably comfortable. They're quite squishy and soft, although the backs are really rather low and there's no head support, so if there was a rear shunt I would be a little bit worried about that. But you'd have to hope that the passive safety of the good visibility, decent handling and good brakes would keep you out of trouble. Oh dear, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm near Gatwick, so I'm running into traffic now. I started this morning driving the Tomcat, but I had to run back home, and as it was getting warm I took the Mercedes out, and as that's got air conditioning I'm really glad I did, because it is horribly hot right now. It's just nasty. Have I mentioned that Lady Diana had one of these when she first started going out with Prince Charles, before she was Princess Diana? I'm sure you knew that anyway. It's filling time now. Stuck at a junction wondering what to say. I know, I'll tell you, Lady Diana used to have a Metro. I wonder other famous people had a Metro. Did Kenneth Williams have a Metro, or am I just making stuff up? It wouldn't be the first time. Oh, nice Saab 95 estate there. Right, let's get off this roundabout and actually drive! Yay! The great thing with this car is it ticks so many boxes, because on the one hand it's old enough to be retro. It is very, very retro. That square styling, the fairly basic interior and equipment level, the way it handles and rides in that kind of lovely soft way that cars just don't anymore. And the fact that, it's 1982, this thing's like 30 years old. But at the same time, it's modern enough that you can use it in everyday traffic. If you wanted to daily drive this, you could. Well, I know I just did a video about how I'm not daily driving bangers anymore, because it's just not worth the stress. But if I worked, say, 10 miles from home, it wouldn't be an issue. It's only because I drive like 100 or 200 miles minimum most days, and I've got to get there. I've given up on cheaper things as daily transport. But I would happily use this as a weekend toy or for local journeys. Well, this thing cruises really quite nicely, so even at ice, it's going to be good on the motorway as well. Although it's only got 4 speeds, it'll be shouting a bit when you hit 70 for the long haul. Oh my word, look at that. Can you see this? Mark 1 Land Rover Discovery. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this little trip out in a very early mini Metro. There are a bunch of things that you as a viewer are obligated to do. I've done my bit, I've given you the lovely content. Now here's time to do your duty. Hit like, hit subscribe, watch an advert at some point during this show, because then I get paid for doing this. Otherwise, I'm just taking time off work and getting dirty looks off my wife, who's wondering why I'm wasting all my time.